TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, or the Roth TSP, and BRS, the blended retirement system that now applies to all of our military members. Alphabet soup, we are military, we like our acronyms. Yes, got a dog barking in the background, apologize for that, but she won't settle down, go back to sleep. But we're going to talk about TSP, Roth TSP, the pros of the Thrift Savings Plan, which I think are excellent, the advantage of Roth TSP, but maybe some other alternatives, either when you get out of the military or to start on the side alongside TSP. That is a great workplace retirement savings plan. Hey, it's John, just taking a quick break. Give you a little bit of my story. I'm a retired Navy EOD officer. You know, our motto is diffusing danger. So I've turned that into diffusing financial danger because I want to help you learn more about personal finance, whether it applies to all of us, whether it applies specifically to military and veterans. But this is just going to be an educational video. If you like this content, hit that like button, subscribe, especially leave a comment. That way I know I'm on the mark or maybe I'm missing the mark a little bit. So, hey, let's get back to today's topic. Let's jump back to the topic at hand today. I'm using an excerpt from a Military Money 101 financial literacy seminar that I taught just a few days ago. So we're going to watch that video. It'll explain more about some of your military financial benefits.
Let's talk about TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan, and the Blended Retirement Plan. The Thrift Savings Plan is a great 401k-like savings plan. So if you're only familiar with TSP, don't worry about what I just said. If you're only familiar with 401ks, now you have a general understanding about how TSP works. TSP has both a pre-tax and an after-tax, or also known as Roth option. The great thing about TSP compared to a lot of retirement plans in other workplaces is TSP has very simple investment options. We'll talk about those briefly. And they also have what's called the life cycle blends, which are based in 5-year increments on when people think they're going to retire. The other great thing and why I'm a fan of TSP, remember when I mentioned those 1% and 2% and 3% fees that eat away at your accounts? TSP has the lowest fees of any account I've seen that has fees, like 0.1, and in one account, I think it's even 0.01. Other 401ks, I've never seen them with fees that low. The beauty also is TSP is set up as an automated investment. I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine named Yvette. She was referred to me when she was getting close to retirement. And she said, well, yes, John, I've been participating in TSP. Right when it was offered to us, I began using it. I had good counsel. And what happened is every time I got a 2-year service pay raise or a promotion, I increased how much I was putting in there. I said, Yvette, that's awesome. How much do you have in there? And she started laughing. She goes, I don't even know. I'm like, seriously? And she goes, yeah, I just said it and forgot it. I'm like, Yvette, that's actually the best way to do it. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. She had a really great personality and easy laugh. I said, well, Yvette, you wouldn't be talking to me if you didn't want to hear about your TSP options. So we need to get you logged in. She didn't even know how to log into her account. Well, we figured that out. She logs in and she starts laughing even harder. And I say, Yvette, okay, now you really got to tell me. And she goes, I have $100,000 in TSP. I missed the money that first month, maybe that second month, right? But then she'd get a pay raise. They'd have more to spend, but she'd also put a little bit more in there. And over time, she had a 6-figure account balance. So that's why I tell that story. I'm just so happy for Yvette. The blended retirement system is the retirement system that all service members that entered on or after 1 January 2018 are part of. They're not part of the traditional retirement plan or what I call the legacy system. What it does is it combines some of the benefits of the old legacy retirement, that you get at 20 years of service, with a TSP contribution made by the Department of Defense or the government and a match. After you've been in 60 days, basically complete boot camp. right? Some folks boot camp's a little bit longer than that. But pretty much after you finish boot camp, your service starts contributing 1% to TSP for you. You're welcome to contribute more. And after 2 years of service, the military will contribute 4% to TSP if you're contributing 5% for 2 years of service. So during that first service enlistment or officer obligation. So what that means is if you're putting 5% into TSP, 5% goes in as a match. That's free money. That's 100% return, at least for that year. I tell people, I have a young man from our church, just talked to him yesterday morning, and he's putting in at least that 5%, right? To get that full 5% when he hits the 2 year point. He's getting the 1% now. The BRS was created because remember, those of us that are dinosaurs, it was all or nothing. We might have loved being in the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, Coast Guard, your service. But if you didn't do 20 years, you got maybe some money you saved once they offered TSP, a little bit in TSP, but you got nothing, right? And I had some friends that got out before they did 20, but well over 10. Now with BRS, you're building that TSP balance. If you do 20 years, you still get a pension. But what if you only do 4 or 8 or 10? Then you have a TSP balance and you've had that 5% match. I recommended to this young Marine and others start a Roth TSP because you're paying so little in taxes at 5%, right? You're not making a whole lot, but you're not going to miss it because you're probably making a more consistent paycheck than the high school job or the part-time job you had when you first got out of high school or college, right? I remember how much my first paycheck was in the Navy. I thought I was a millionaire. Now, if that was all I got, my wife would look at me really hard and go, "Hey, how are we going to live on this?" Right? Uh, yes, Jennifer, the blended retirements, some people were given the ability to opt into BRS if they were early in their careers in 2018. But those of us that served before 2018 could still participate in TSP or Roth TSP, but we were in that all or nothing 20-year retirement. Now, under BRS, they do get a smaller retirement check percentage at 20 years of service, but they still get one. I want to talk a little bit about TSP funds. I can't go into a lot of detail on them, but there are 5 funds inside TSP. 2 are fixed income funds. They're basically like bond funds, but there are 3 that are stock funds. C fund is almost like an S&P 500 index fund. The S fund is a small cap fund, and I is an international fund. There you see their rate of returns over time, they've done well. Pretty much the C fund mirrors the market. But remember the graph. Remember my friend's dad who in 08, 09 wanted to retire and he lost 50% of his retirement. I was in Iraq and I was contributing to TSP in 2008 and I saw that big drop just like he did. That's one of the dangers is, over time, these are not bad options. And because they're so low fee, but we have to understand these 3 are still market based and they're at market risk. So that's my first problem with TSP. I'm a big, big fan of TSP, but you are at market risk and you're at inflation risk. If you're in that CSNI funds, as I just showed you, they're tied to the market. And you notice there was a kind of hiccup there a few years ago, 5 years ago, when we went through COVID. The GNF funds, those are the other 2 I talked about, they're bond funds and those yields may not equal inflation. We're not going to spend much more time talking about inflation tonight, but we do need to be aware of it. The other problem is, and this was what I was talking about with my young friend yesterday morning, he's not even 21 yet, or maybe he just turned 21. His money in TSP is in what I call IRS jail. That means that he cannot have access, unless very limited exclusions, to his own money now until he turns 59 and a half. And we joked about it. His eyes roll back in his head when I say 59 and a half. And I said, Robbie, obviously you're okay. You're not being impolite. I'm over 59 and a half. But when I was his age, I couldn't conceive of it either. because that's 3 times how long he's been alive. And his money is now in what I call IRS jail. He would have to pay a 10% penalty to use his own money. Oh, sorry, I have that slide in there twice. I want to talk about an option that you can use. And remember, I touched on this when I did the history lesson in the teeter totter. It's called an indexing strategy. The indexing strategy is designed to protect your money while it's growing, and more importantly, when you need it. You can put money in there a number of ways. You can roll your TSP out when you leave the military. If you have you can roll an old IRA or an old 401k into it. If you have a lump sum of money in the bank earning those terrible interest rates that are now going down again, you can move that over, or you can start an indexing strategy with monthly payments. Well, what happens is your money goes into a safe money bucket, and then we look at something like the S&P 500 to credit your safe money bucket gain. That's why it's called an indexing strategy. If the market goes up, let's say it goes up that 8% that I've talked about, we come over to your indexing strategy bucket and credit you 8%. The next year, the market might go down. Here's the first great rule and power of an indexing strategy. Any year the market goes down, you will get a zero. There is a 0% floor in the indexing strategy. That's a great benefit, right? Because you know that you're never going to lose money. Let's say the market comes roaring back. That year it gets 12%. Well, any room that has a floor most likely has a ceiling. So do indexing strategies. We call this the not too good to be true line because, if you had a 0% floor but got all the gain, the companies that are on the other side of the indexing strategy might not be there when we need our money. So this protects both them and us. Let's say in your indexing strategy, it's a 10% ceiling. You give up that little bit of gain to know that you'll never lose money again, and we come over to your indexing strategy bucket and credit you 10%. To me, that's a fair trade-off. I give up ever worrying about losing and something that the market has called anxiety that the indexing strategy does not have. I can sleep well at night knowing I'll never lose money. That's one reason I call these a swan account for sleeping well at night. You might be saying, John, anybody can pick numbers and make an illustration look good. What really happened? And I'm glad you asked because I have a graph for that. Let's say you had $100,000 to put in the stock market in the index, the S&P 500 index, and you had $100,000 to put in an indexing strategy that also tracked the S&P 500. This is actual returns, and I'll tell you the years as we go. But the first year the market goes down, remember the power of an indexing strategy is you have a 0% floor. So that first year you get a zero. Not real exciting, but then you see the second year the market goes down again. You get another zero. You're talking to a friend, they say, I'm never going to be able to retire. I started savings 2 years ago and all I've done is lose money. Now zero is your hero. The market comes up, and what does the indexing strategy do? It credits you that gain and goes up as well. Year four, the market goes down, up and down, up and down. Now, another important rule of an indexing strategy kicks in. Every time you're given a gain in the indexing strategy, that becomes your new floor. We look at the indexing strategy in 1 year slices. And so it does a reset at the end of every year, and that becomes your new floor. So when you got the zero, you didn't go down with the market, you just stayed up. And let's think about this again. Was that a gain right there? Well, in one way it was because from year two to year three, the market went up, but you notice the market is still below that $100,000 line. Well, the market came roaring back. And what happens when the market goes up? You now know how indexing strategy works. It went up as well. This is actually the market from 2000 to 2007. So remember when I said the market got back up above even in '07? But what happened in '08? That was when my friend's dad and many other people lost 54%. The index account stayed up at that new high. One reason I'm such a fan of indexing strategies is in 2008, my very favorite client would have lost her retirement. Now, she would have always had a roof over her head. She would always had food over her table because that favorite client is my mom. And I saved my mom's retirement by using an indexing strategy. In 2008, she was 73 years old. She was still working. My mom worked until she was 82, so I've got a long time to keep after it. But she wouldn't have rebuilt half of her retirement savings from 73 until 82, and an indexing strategy saved her retirement. She still lives mostly independently. She's slowing down a little bit, but she still has money because she was protected from that big loss. Well, since then, the market's gone up. We've had a couple of hiccups and it's doing really well. I'm not out here saying an indexing strategy is going to beat the market. Indexing strategy has done pretty well. It's up to $441,000. And this is using the actual indexing strategies that were in place in '01. This is an actual graph of those returns. The other thing, though, even if it hasn't done quite as well as the market, we don't know when that next big drop is. Remember what I said. These are sleep well at night accounts. Maybe you have that old TSP out there. Maybe you have an old 401k out there. Maybe you've inherited an IRA and you could put it in what I like to call an elevator account because it's only going to go up and sideways, up and sideways. And then you don't have to worry about it. Once a year, you're going to find out if you went up or if you went sideways, but you know you're never going to go down. So I'm a big fan of this. I recommend while you're serving, get that maximum BRS match. That's free money, right? Look at other options, start other options. When you get out, think about rolling that TSP over into an IRA using an indexing strategy and maybe starting a 401k that's in the market with that market risk to maybe get those big returns, but you protect yourself with some of your money. I'm not anti-market. I'm just anti-anxiety. So remember, I've already talked a little bit about tax favored strategies. Let's talk about using a tax favored strategy and an indexing strategy together. Remember, I talked about the millionaire couple, and if they came to get all their money, they might pay 50%, right? Some people say 50-50. What if they're in a situation where they have to pay 70-30? They get 70% of their money, but the government gets 30. I did this class one time in Mississippi, and one of my cousins went 70-10. He's a really good guy, but he was never really good at math. And it's funny because his daughter has a PhD in math. She's brilliant. He's a great guy, just math was never his strong subject. But actually, over the average, we see that people might only get 60 cents on the dollar of their own money. Well, let's talk about a tax-free retirement strategy that you could take advantage of. You do have to pay taxes on the money when it comes in. So it's post-tax money. We grow it, grow it, grow it using the indexing strategy I just talked about, but it's growing in a tax-free account. So you're not paying taxes on it, and it can come out tax-free. You might be thinking, John, that does sound a whole lot like a Roth IRA or a Roth TSP I've already talked about. But yes, but remember, it goes in there and it's in IRS jail until you're 59 and a half. Maybe a 529 plan. Remember, I talked about kids getting our veterans education benefits. If you had a lot of money in a 529 plan, now you have to get it out of there and pay taxes in many cases. Why not put it in a tax-free retirement strategy and let it grow there? If they need it for education, use it. If not, you've supercharged their retirement and they've got maybe a 20-year, 22-year, 15-year head start. Maybe it's time to take advantage of the fact that many of us get educational benefits from the military. We're paying that lowest tax rate, and you have access to that money at any time by using this tax-free retirement strategy. It's a little more detailed like that. For the sake of time, I'm already running a little late. So, this is one of those things that it's very personalized. It's not hard to set up, but it does have some personalized features that it's best to talk one-on-one about. I wish I had known about this when I was 26. Again, I'd be 6 years away if had I used a tax-free retirement strategy from that 500,000, maybe even more.
Thanks for watching. Again, if you found something that you liked, leave a comment, hit that like. That'll tell me I'm on the right track with these videos, and all the best.